Hello, everyone. Welcome to Mentor Monday. Mentor Monday is your weekly microdose of encouragement, inspiration, and miracle grow on your potential as a coach. Hey, if you would jump in right now, you know the drill. Hopefully, if you haven't been around for any length of time, well, what we always try to do, because I'm over here in the studio over here on the West Coast, I'm in California, where usually they have that poster that says endless summer. This seems to be like endless winter. It's still like 50 something, 60 degrees today and cloudy, rain last night. Like, we have no idea what's going on. But for some reason, winter won't end. But you know what? I would love to hear from you because, well, I can't see you or hear your beautiful voice. So just a huge favor. Jump inside the comments. Let us know where you're joining us from, what you're excited about. If you've got any comments, any questions as we're doing this tonight, this is all for you. I don't do anything that we do on Monday nights as fluff. So we will not waste your time. You're going to walk away with some really helpful stuff, but also some encouragement, motivation. Also, we've got advanced skills training that's coming up June 16th and 17th. I'll tell you a little bit more about that, but that's to earn your CPC, Certified Professional Coach certification. And it's an event completely focused on breakthrough. But even tonight, I'm going to give you a couple of little nuggets and some tools to walk away with. So let me say hello to a few people who are saying hello to me. And there's Melissa joining us from Gainesville, Florida. Awesome. Paul is joining us from Boise. Joan is joining us from Bakersfield. Sabrina is joining us from Virginia. And again, if you are just making it into the room, let us know that you're here. Also, do us a huge favor. Like this post and share it. Why? Because, well, that tells Facebook and YouTube that we're doing a good job and we're providing not only value to you, but, it's relevant content that can actually help other people. And so that tells the algorithm, it tells those people, if you want to figure out how the algorithm works, well, the simple thing is just do things that add value to people and ask them to like it or subscribe. If you're on YouTube right now, subscribe to our channel. And that way you get notified every time. If you're on our email list, we do our best to try to notify everybody that we're going live and stuff like that. But, that's what we try to do. Let me look at something really quick. I just want to make sure that we're good. Gmail has not been good to us today, but maybe they'll be better to us in the future because Gmail seems to be throwing all of our email today into promotions. And we do a really good job out of, staying out of there most of the time. But Gmail, well, they let us down tonight and it's all going in promotion. So hopefully people find us because you know what? 80% of email account holders are using Gmail. So that's what it is. Anybody else like to say hello? Jump in here. Appreciate what Melissa was saying here, that she says, I'm excited for this video today. Hubby and I have definitely had a storm hit our lives and have learned that God is faithful. We're just now bouncing back after a 7-year spiral. Melissa also adds, remember when you like videos on YouTube, it bookmarks it to your liked videos in your library to watch later. And it helps boost this video in the algorithm to be seen by others. Yeah, I appreciate that. Anybody else like to say hello to us? That would be amazing. Jump in and say hello to us. And I'll keep referring back. I'm going to step off and just have one sip of water. And if you're wondering, I sound a little bit weird. I've had a little bit of vocal strain because we did a boot camp about a week and a half ago, and I just haven't recovered yet. So what are we talking about? Well, for the next couple of weeks, we're going to be talking about, a little bit about resilience and people getting breakthrough, because that's the subject that we're on for June anyway, because we're coming up on advanced skills training. Now, I'm very passionate about this topic, especially right now in life, because one thing that I have seen, and maybe you've seen it, maybe you've experienced it yourself, we are now in 2023. I'm still hearing people talk about COVID. Still in 2023. Now that word, whatever, that abbreviation, whatever COVID is, a word, whatever, it really does not come out of my mouth at all. I don't think about it. It's not something that's in the forefront of my mind or anything else. But I will tell you, I hear leaders talking about it. I hear business people talking about it. I hear all of this stuff where people are literally stuck. like stuck from it's 3 years now. Matter of fact, where we are right now is that people have literally pulled themselves out of the workforce. Not that there are not jobs. There are so many jobs right now. There's so many people that I know that are looking for workers. Pretty much everywhere that I go, I see people looking for employees. And one of the things that I keep hearing people say is, the bar is really, really low right now. If you could just show up to work on time and do a good job, do a competent job, you're like an upper echelon employee right now. Have you guys noticed that in many respects, a lot of the places that we liked a few years ago, now that when we go back, you've noticed that the standards of service have dropped? It's a couple of restaurants that I used to love a few years ago. But now I've had to just like completely take them off of options because now when I go there, not only is the food subpar, but the service is subpar. And it's like people almost don't care. It's almost like they don't want to show up, almost like it doesn't matter in some kind of way. Right now, willingly, men, adult men up to about age 55, so not young people. I'm talking about people all the way up to Gen Xers. So we're talking about a wide span, have taken 7 million who have opted out of working completely, who have opted out not only to not look for a job, not have a job, but to not even look for a job. Compare this to, well, let's say 1953. 98% of people, 98% of men in that demographic right there in 1953 either had a job or were actively looking for a job. 98%. So what's happened and what are the shifts and what are all of these things? Well, tonight what I want to do, because we're going to spend a couple of weeks on this, I want to give you some thoughts around this so that we can understand where we're at in the world and what's happening and what's occurring. So we can have a little bit of a handle in terms of how we got here. But I'm also going to end with a tool. I'm going to end with, even for you, for some of you who have noticed that you've lost a step. You're not as aggressive. You're not as hungry. You're not as on the edge as you used to be. Because let me say this on the beginning. You were made to fight a battle that only you could fight. You were made to conquer giants and to slay dragons. You were made to live a life of purpose, meaning, and fulfillment. And if you are not doing that, if that's not the way that your life is living right now, you have quite simply believed a lie. I told you in the email, we put it in the subject line, I might step on some toes tonight. Probably so, because some of the ways that we have been living our life and some of the ways that we have been addressing things in the world and some of the ways we've even been raising our kids has been wrong. And we've actually created a resilience issue that's going on in the world right now. It's not been that long ago where they started throwing around this term of snowflakes. Have you heard that one lately? It's like increasingly we are so given to offense and not even talking about what matters and not even being able to call the greatness and call somebody forward without somebody getting offended in some kind of a way. And what's turned into is that over time, we live less meaningful lives than we ever have. Have you noticed how bad movies have gotten in more recent years in terms of the kind of stories that we're telling these days? If you try to tell a modern story that is heroic, you have a hard time finding that because you're having a hard time finding people who are living those stories. In most cases, you go back to an old story. So they'll go back to, the Middle Ages. They'll go back to the Victorian period. They'll go back to some kind of gnarly time where people were fighting for something because they had an understanding and their heart was connected to something that was purposeful. And there were values that were driving them. And it didn't matter even if they lost their life. There was something to die for, right? And now we've got people who are stuck in depression at such levels, even people my age. I'm almost 50 years old. People who are so stuck in the mire of mediocrity in the world that they have nothing, they don't even have anything to live for, much less much less to die for. See, there's something that is wrong. There's something that has stolen our resilience. There's something that has shown up in our life that has stopped us from fighting a battle anymore. And so, for the most part, we're just kind of showing up. We're just checking in. We're just, you know what? We're logging in at work or we're punching the time card, whatever that looks like. We got to do more than showing up because we're living lives that are inferior than probably lives that we were living 10 years ago or 15 years ago. And not only for the sake of our life, but for the sake of the generations, we need to live better lives. And we need to be people who live lives that are on the edge of things. Like right now, I'll tell you, and I don't think, listen, I'm not talking myself up or anything else, but I want you to know that I have young people who are showing up in our life all the time. I had a young couple want to meet with me and my wife. I'm like, why does this young couple that's about to get married want to come hang out with me and my wife? I had another young couple, 19 years old, coming and hanging out and having dinner at my house with two 50-year-old people. Who wants to do this? The consistent thing that I always hear from the emerging generation, not that they do not want anything, they are looking for people who have conviction, who will live on the edge of life, and they will not be afraid of risking, and they will not be afraid of putting themselves out there anymore. And they come to us and they say, no one's living life like you are living right now. You guys have your hands on something. You are onto something that most people your age are not onto, and most people our age is not onto or living into right now. I could take that and be very prideful about it, or I could grieve over my own generation or the generations that are a little bit older and say, we should all be living better lives. What has made you settle? What civilized you? You Gen Xers watching me tonight, you know, all of us who were born like from, you know, the late 60s all the way to about 1979, something like that. Who civilized you? We used to be so gnarly back in the 70s and 80s. Don't you remember when you lived with that little bit of an edge, that rebellious tinge that was in you? Is there no more fight in you anymore? Aren't we better than this at this point? Because I can't raise everybody's kids in the region that I live in. And here's the thing, is what it means is that we've got to step up and live better lives, which means that we've got to start right now living better stories and telling better stories. And that's the preview of where we're really headed. Let me say hello to a couple more people who are probably saying hello to me. And hopefully that's already giving you a taste of where we're going tonight. There's Michelle from Encinitas. How's it going? I'm already being told to preach. I will do it. There's Kim. How's it going, Kim? And Sandy from New Jersey. Very cool. All right. Well, let's do this thing. Where are we starting at? Well, here's where we're starting at. What we all have to be aware of is that all of us who are sitting right now seem to be hardwired for negative bias. And what do I mean by that? Well, right now, inside of you, there is a nervous system, there is a design kind of in you that is wired for a survival instinct. And some people would say, well, it's kind of a primal instinct or whatever when we were cavemen and cavewomen or whatever, well, whatever. They can have that argument. What I do know is that we are all wired for negative bias. We seem to be more wired for pain or avoiding pain than we are to pursue pleasure. And there's some real evident kinds of things, and you can probably relate to this in your own life, is that it seems that we remember negative events more clearly than we remember positive events. Think about your childhood. Remember the most clear memories that you have in your life, the most clear memories that you have of your young adult life, the most clear memories that you probably have over the last 10 or 15 years in your life. If you're able to write them all down, if you're able to say, here are the negative ones and here are the positive ones, I guarantee you that it would stack up on the negative side heavily. It seems that when there are negative experiences and strong emotions or whatever, and it doesn't even have to go as far as trauma, it seems to make an indelible mark in our subconscious. It seems to mark us, and we seem to be able to go there. We seem to be able to get a hold of those negative emotions a lot easier than we can positive ones. And especially that the positive emotions could actually connect with great times, great experiences. We always, and think about your replay system, you always replay the negatives over and over and over again, even if they happen. And this is an interesting way that the brain works. If you had a negative experience on Saturday, and if on Sunday and Monday you replayed that, the way that your brain works is that it's almost as if, at least the way the brain sees it, that happened to you like 50 or 100 times, however many times that you replayed it. And we never live into our greatest moments and ever replay those kinds of things to leave a mark. Here's the next thing, is that we obsess over criticism rather than praise. And it happens. What is it about us that when we hear something negative, that even if we had some year-long review and the entire review was 90% positive, we will focus on the 10% negative, and we will focus on that criticism more than anything, and it will get more of our attention than anything else. It's almost like we can't hear anything else that anybody said. And not just us, but we're seeing this increasingly generationally. What do we see immediate? What do we see with how we're educating students? How are we educating people in college that we don't even want to touch criticism in any kind of a way, even if it's constructive, because we know that they can't even handle it anymore. Third thing is that we react more strongly to negative events than we do hopeful events. What if we actually did the opposite? What if we had an exaggeration to everything that was hopeful and everything that was positive? You know what they do to the people who are increasingly optimistic or idealistic? We always act like they are naive. I had this dude, I remember knowing him years ago. We were good friends. And I just thought that he had no self-awareness. And we would joke about him because I was like, man, that guy never seems to have know anything that's going on, because he was always so positive. Nothing ever got him in a bad mood. Even if somebody said something bad about him or whatever, he brushed it off. And I was like, and we would be like, this guy has such a lack of self-awareness. He doesn't even know that people are criticizing him. Or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe the opposite is that he focuses more on praise than he does criticism. Maybe what the opposite is actually happening is that instead of reacting to negative events, he's only reacting in an exaggerated way into positive events. The reality is that he actually lived a better life and had less stress than any of us. So who's to judge? Are we going to call somebody delusional? I literally had, for the first time in my life, a couple of months ago, someone literally trying to tell me that I was delusional because I was so positive and full of joy. And I'm like, well, why don't you just allow me to live in my delusion then, if that's the way that you really think? But it was somebody who was so focused on everything that's going on wrong in the world that they couldn't see up. They couldn't see anything that was positive that was happening. And it was like, well, how are you going to ever find purpose? How are you ever going to find meaning? And he couldn't. Here's the last thing, is that research says it takes 3 positive experiences to even offset a negative one. And so this is what we're talking about, is that we are talking about our bent and the way that we're wired. Well, this is what's on the hardwiring side of things, is that we realize is that we're kind of operating. What's important for us to know, that we operate from a survival instinct in general. And you kind of learn that when you're a kid and everything else. But here's a beautiful thing about you as an adult, you as a human being. At any given point in your life, you can step outside of that and you can think differently about yourself. You can process things differently, and you can have a different outcome than you're having right now. And we know that because all the research on brain science and behavior and everything else has actually proven that, but most people aren't doing it. Most people are actually in a downward spiral, and they're not coming out of it anytime soon. So let me give you a couple of other things. This article came out in Newsweek a couple of years ago. And this writer wrote, "Is America creating an anti-resilient society?" And this is what he wrote. And this is a nice little piece out of the entire writing. From rubberized playgrounds to scoreless soccer, from social promotion to no red ink on school papers, from automaker bailouts to bank bailouts. We're living in a culture where risk taking isn't cultivated and failure isn't permitted. We've been so busy coddling our children and ourselves that we've made our country less resilient. If that's offensive to you because some writer puts it out in their opinion in Newsweek, well, let me get it a little bit more deeper, because what I want you to understand is a pervasive issue in our entire culture that is affecting us globally. And a psychologist pointed it out all the way back in 1995 when he wrote this about the self esteem movement. This is from Martin Seligman. He is the preeminent psychologist that understands resilience back and forth and has studied it for decades. And this is what he wrote in 1995. By emphasizing how a child feels at the expense of what the child does, mastery, persistence, overcoming frustration and boredom, and meeting challenge, parents and teachers are making this generation more vulnerable to depression. And he adds this as well: flattery is insincere. Feelings of self esteem in particular and happiness in general develop as side effects of mastering challenges, working successfully, overcoming frustration and boredom, and winning. Let me tell you what some of his research has found. What he said all the way back then, and I've read his research and I've done training through him and everything else because it's a brilliant program that they have at Penn. Here's what I know. What they told us back in, the 60s and 70s about the self-esteem movement is that if somebody feels better about themselves, then they're going to necessarily, they're going to stay away from drugs, they're going to have better grades and all of this other stuff. But they got cause and effect out of the way, because here's the thing, is that there's a lot of serial killers and people who do significant crime that are high in self-esteem. They are. Just research it. We've got people who will do horrendous crimes and things against people that have high self-esteem. That's not really what the issue is. See, what we did and what happened to, well, some of you who are a little bit younger, it didn't really happen to my generation, but with the participation trophies and all of the other things, what we did is that we stole and we took away the very thing that was going to create resilience in an individual. What we did and all of these things that we've been doing over the years, because listen, Gen Xers, you haven't been much better with your kids in this as well, because we're seeing a lot of people who are experiencing a failure to launch right now. And it's these very things, is that when life starts to hit, because life sometimes is going to punch you in the face. Listen, there's going to be adversity in your life. And when you avoid adversity over and over and over again, when life finally corners you and punches you in the face, you have no kind of recourse. You just completely flatline and you hit the ground, and you don't even have the motivation to be able to get up anymore. So what happens, even for adults, and this is what I believe is happening, in COVID and all of this other stuff, is that there used to be a time when you knew if things got really difficult, your parents would always tell you, you got to pick yourself up, you've got to do this, dust yourself off, go again, and everything else. Well, what has happened along the way, and we've done this especially in raising kids, and it's something that we've done in culture. We've literally battled people to not have an opinion, do not speak your voice because it could possibly offend someone. And here's what happens, is that when no one has an opinion, no one's opinion gets challenged. No one's thought, no one's wisdom, no one's ideas. And where we are right now, on the whole in culture, is a lack of true self-awareness and a lack of true understanding of anything about ourselves and how we can change. What do people do now? Now they can tell you what label of psychological condition that they have or whatever. And they don't even battle against it. They just run around with labels. I literally watched a person on Shark Tank selling t-shirts and selling stickers and everything else, becoming a millionaire because she's selling things that give people a label to fall under with some kind of a psychological or emotional condition. Why are people looking for labels and selling out short and playing small? A lot of it has to do with the fact that we were, for our entire life, supposed to be challenged. We were supposed to be people who come against adversity and we win. And the winning on the other side did something in us. It created a resilience in us, but that's how you find mastery. It's how you know that, hey, in spite of this thing, there was true learning, there was true character development, and all of these other kinds of things. So I've got to say to you guys who are a little bit older than these generations, because some of you are like, well, how does this apply to me? Well, at what time did you stop fighting? When did you lose your why? When did you stop fighting your giants? When did you stop living heroically? When did you start playing small? This is what we're talking about, is that whatever narrative, whatever thing that kept you from staying in the game anymore is the very thing that you're called to right now, because the world needs you right now. Some of you who used to know how to battle and how to fight, I'm telling you, there's generations right now who do not know how to rise up, who do not know how to lift their heads right now. And we can't be people who stick our heads in the sand or keep holding on to the very little things that we've got, because they're slowly being pulled away. Now, here's what, if you want to know if this guy was a prophet or not, well, this is what we ended up with later. Is that the mental health of Gen Z, you can say with the generations, that you see things declining significantly. You see that depression diagnosis has went up 33% just since 2013. This is where we're at right now. And it's easier for people to say, oh, well, people have a chemical this or whatever. Here's the reality. What you think actually creates a genetic disposition in you. And I teach this in advanced skills training. When you think, there are literally proteins that are created in your brain, because your thoughts are things, and they leave a mark inside of your genetics. Did you know that if you thought differently in your life, that you would actually create a different genetic pattern? This is something that we've learned in more recent years. So the reality is that it's not necessarily what was done to me in terms of the negative things or the trauma or the difficulty. It's really what I have believed about myself or about that situation that continues to perpetuate those kinds of emotional reactions and everything else in our life. I'll say it in another way. That disappointment that you went through years ago is the reason why you're still playing it small today. 2020 did something to some of you guys. Some of you who are listening to me, you know who you were before 2020, and you haven't been showing up in life. You allowed the narrative, whatever was going on, to create a new consequence in your life that you never lived into before then. We need to go back to what we were believing about ourselves and what we were believing about the world and everything else. Because it's easy to say, well, maybe we were just a little more naive. Maybe the media has been lying to us for longer. Maybe the politics are worse than what they were. I don't care about any of those things. Oh, I got red pilled and now I see the world very differently. Maybe that's actually what your problem is. Because we've got to go back to a place where, in spite of anything that's going on in the world, that I have a reality check, that there is that there's a self-awareness, that there's self-efficacy, which means that I have a lot that I can control in my life, and I have different choices that I can make every day that has an outcome that could be different than the one that I'm living right now. Michael Jordan said this. He said, I've never looked at the consequences of missing a big shot. When you think about the consequences, you always think about the negative result. And that's what a lot of people are doing right now. When it comes to, for you who are thinking about a coaching career, are you thinking about everything that could go wrong? Or are you thinking about what could go right? Are you thinking about everything that could go wrong? Or are you thinking about your purpose and meaning and fulfillment and all of those other things? Because that used to be the thing that drove you. You didn't do any things that you did. None of you were getting married because you were thinking of a negative result. None of you were having kids because you were thinking of a negative result. None of you chose to go to school or whatever you did. Anything that you embarked on in your life previous, and many of you previous to COVID, you made a choice because there was a positive outcome that you were pursuing. And some of you are pursuing right now the opposite, trying to avoid a negative result. And you're realizing that as we go along in this, the more that we hold on to things that are mediocre and below us, the more that we're actually losing our purpose. And in some cases, that we're actually losing out financially right now. So there was this model that was created years ago. It's a psychological model, but I'm going to show you guys how to apply it in terms of coaching because it's really helpful to understand how we get here in the places that we are. First of all, what happens is that there's adversity in life. And adversity is a normal thing. Let's normalize adversity. It does not mean that you're living a bad life or you made a bad choice or anything else. Adversity is a normal part of the human experience. Matter of fact, adversity is the very thing that can trigger gratitude and growth and joy and all kinds of things. I mean, for any of you who have been to a third world country in your life, or you've just seen pictures and you're like, man, I'm glad I don't live like that. Like, I went to Europe a few years ago, and that wasn't third world at all, but their first world is different than our first world. And I'm like, dude, I am so spoiled. I'm never going to live anywhere except the United States. Every time that I would come home or I would travel to where I live or anything else, I'd always be like, God, thank you so much that this is where I live. And that even though life is not 100% perfect, my life is not about perfect. It's about being grateful and having gratitude for what I actually have and being not like out of my mind and realizing that, hey, life is actually pretty good. If I am objective, I have to look at the totality of life and not the 5% that sucks or even the 10% that's not working. So adversity is actually a normal part of life, and it doesn't have to trigger anything bad. Matter of fact, those are always the places that we grow, or in the places that we're experiencing struggle. I mean, think about it when you go to the gym. You don't go to the gym because you're trying to get muscles. You're trying to go to the gym to work what you already have. So that what we've done actually with kids and what we've even done to ourselves, some of you are out of shape right now. And I'm not talking about physically. I'm talking about when was the last time that you were in a fight? When was the last time that you were developing yourself in adverse conditions so that you could thrive? Because if there's not a resistance against you, a plane can't take off the ground unless there's resistance. If you go to the gym and you work out with weight that doesn't even require, like it's just this effort right here, you know you're not going to build anything. You don't go to the gym because you want to get muscles. You go to the gym because you have muscles and you want to grow, you want to strengthen. And the way that that happens is that everything gets broken down in the moment of resistance so that it gets rebuilt on a new foundation and you go on to what you're making, what you are for. See, for some of you who want to become coaches, adversity is not your issue. It's what you believe about adversity that's your issue right now. So adversity in this ABC model, it starts with adversity that people look back and what keeps them withdrawing is that they see something that didn't go well in their life. And what that leads them to is a belief. And I say it's the story that we tell. This is not objective, by the way. What is objective is this happened. What is not objective is what you believe about what happened. A versus B, or whatever narrative that you create around it. And where it leads us then is that it leads us to a consequence. I'm going to feel and I'm going to act as a result of what I believe. I'll give you a really quick example of this. Let's say that, well, you were walking around the mall. For those of you who still have a mall, you're walking around the mall and you've got one of your kids there. It's like, let's say it's your teenager that's there. And they're hanging out at the mall or whatever, and you just kind of like run into the mall, and you go in there, and your teenager sees you, but then they turn their back with their friends really, and they're like laughing and everything, and then they like run off the other end. You know, like they run into the other end of the mall because they saw you. Now, that's what factually happened. They looked at us, they turn around, and they take off running the opposite direction. Now, what you could do is you could do a number of things. You could believe, you could tell a story about what happened, because this is what you'll do. You'll tell a story and you'll be like, wow, I can't believe that my kid was so disrespectful. They saw me and then they're going to run the other direction. I'm going to go give them a piece of my mind because I'm their mom. I'm their dad. And you're going to run over there. And the consequences is you're going to feel bad about it and you're going to go ballistic on them. Or you could run over there to them because you had a belief that they were doing something bad. They were shoplifting or they were doing something that was wrong. And that's why they were running. And in which case you run over there to basically, third degree them and ask them every question that you possibly can to shake them down. And you're going to go home with me right now. And you take them away from their friends. Or you could say, they're just those goofy kids. They're just like I was. I was so embarrassed to be around my parents and being seen with them. See, in all of these cases, it really is this, that there is an adversity. There was a belief that's basically the story that you told about adversity. And then there is a resulting feeling and the way that you acted out of this. You know what? I'm going to give you guys something else. Let's talk about the story that you're telling about why you haven't become a coach yet. Some of you who are sitting here right now, my dream and my purpose is to start a coaching career. And all I've got to do really is, it's to reverse engineer this, right? What do I mean by reverse engineering it? Well, here's how we reverse engineer it. We reverse engineer it like this. Because the easy thing for me, because I don't know what your adversity is, what I can do though is that I can look at the consequence. I can look at what you've been doing recently, and it can kind of reverse engineer the process, and I can get to what your belief is based on the adversity. So here's some possible ones. Like there's some of you who are sitting here right now, you're probably going to find yourself in one or a couple of these categories. You got a dream, you got a purpose, you've got a calling, it's meaning, you want to change people's lives. You probably even have people tell you that you're supposed to be a coach, all kinds of different things. There's all kinds of different things that are happening in your life. You're living an unfulfilling job. There's all of these different things that are happening that, and you feel in your heart, you're supposed to be coaching people. But right now, you're still not coaching people. That means that adversity has happened in your life and you have a narrative about that. So if I look at this could be any one of you. I've been Googling for 2 years about it, but I've done nothing. That's the circumstance that you are in right now. This is the consequence of what you believe. I keep working a job that's unfulfilling. Notice who's in control here, because we're talking about who's in control. You're in control of this. I am still barely getting by. Or some of you, I got certified, but now I'm frozen stiff. Or I started, but I quit. See, if you started and you quit, if you've been Googling this thing for a really long time and you haven't pulled the trigger on it or anything else, you know what it's telling me? It's telling me that something happened and you got a story that you're telling that's preventing you from being able to move forward. So what could it be? Well, it could be any number of things. The adversity could be, finances are bad. It's a bad financial situation, or I lost my job, or you could say, the economy, because that ends up being a great excuse for people. We could go down the long list of all of the different things. What is the adversity? But the adversity isn't what really matters. It's the story that we tell based on the adversity that we are experiencing. Because if we look at the adversity that we're going through, let's just pull this one out right here because it's kind of a popular one. The people tell the story, if the money was bad for me, the money is bad for everyone. So no one will pay. Or the economy, it's a bad time to start a new career. or it can be any number of things. We could find countless stories that we are telling right now. You know, uh, no one, no one would pay me. There might be a story around time. It can be any number of things that we're having here. But there's something right now. If you're not doing the thing that's in your heart to do, if you've done nothing in spite of the fact that you've been Googling something, then you've got belief issues. Let me tell you a story about my coaching career. I had lost everything. I was unemployed for 6 months in one of the most expensive cities in the United States to live in, which is in San Diego. And we lost our house. We lost everything. All of our stuff that we had went into storage. And we went and lived with people for about 6 to 8 weeks, something like that. It really couldn't get any worse than that. We were going to food pantries. I'm not exaggerating this story at all. I had never had a moment of unemployment my entire adult life. I'd always been employed and always offered something good and everything else. And here I am with my wife with major chronic illness going on and no health care for her and no money. And I can't even keep a roof over our head or anything else. And eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches every day. And this is a time when the economy was tanked out then. This is back in 2007, 2008. So everything had kind of fallen apart. I literally started my career in that recession. I know of 2 major companies that came out of the recession. You know what one of them was? One of them was Uber. Another one was Airbnb. Before that time, if you told your mom you were going to get a ride with a stranger you'd never met before that you met on the internet, they would have told you were crazy. And you would have said the same thing. You would have told one of your friends, "Oh yeah, I'm staying in someone's spare bedroom on my vacation." You'd be like, "You're out of your mind. You're going to get killed," or something like that. Everything changed after that point. You know what they did? Is that they found a pain point and they found an opportunity when they're smack dab in the middle of an economic downturn. See, because here's where it comes from. It comes from the story that you choose to tell and the fact that you see that there's an opportunity. So you make a different kind of action. There's a different consequence emotionally and in the way that you act in your life because you are able to think differently than what everybody else was thinking. See, this is why some of you need to get off of social media. This is why some of you, you need to completely get off of social media. You need to quit following political leaders and political accounts. Like some of you, for the health and for your future, you need to shut those things down because here's what I think has happened for some of you who were crushing it before 2020 is that you started allowing media when we were sent home where we couldn't work and all this other stuff. You know what we started listening to is that we started listening to other voices who started convincing us that there are no opportunities in the world, that there is less opportunity than there was before. I was talking to my daughter about this, who's 19 years old. And she's talking about how depressed her generation is and everything else because they think that there's less opportunity and they won't be able to make more money. Are you frigging kidding me? Can you imagine if one of us, boomers or Gen Xers, would have been given the internet when we were kids, how we would be ruling the world as a result of that? We would have figured it out. Like there was a different mindset and there was a grit and there was a determination about us and everything else. But what has ended up happening because of media and education and a bunch of other things and the voices that we are allowing to prevail in our life that is giving us an opinion and are putting us in a belief system that has no faith about it at all. Because listen, to start a business, to bet on yourself, to bank on yourself requires a certain a level of confidence, doesn't it? A certain level of resilience, a certain level of faith that I'm going to do something that I don't have any kind of a guarantee out of it. And when I did it, I didn't have a guarantee. But what was crazy is that when I bet on myself and Life Coach Training Institute sits here today, thousands and thousands of coaches later, when we went out and I did something that was the opposite of what everybody else was doing in coach training. And what they literally told me, you cannot do that and you won't be able to do that and you can't train people to be coaches online. That's what they were telling me. This is why we're pioneers in education. This is why we grew by 30% in 2020, while those old codgers in coaching were shutting their doors. I'm not trying to make ourselves better than anybody, but even they got caught in a belief system that cost them in a long way. And we're supposed to be in the belief shifting business, right? So how do we belief shift out of this? Well, it's pretty easy. You do it like this, is that you dispute. You got to bring things into dispute, which means that I got to question this right here. Like this story right here, because the story keeps perpetuating itself. How do I do that? I can do that myself. How do I do that? Because I can ask questions like, what evidence suggests otherwise? What evidence suggests otherwise that you could be successful as a coach right now? Well, I can tell you some evidence, because the coaching industry has grown by billions right now. Oh, well, maybe there's too many coaches. No, there are thousands of coaches. There are 8 billion people on the planet. You know that there are millions and growing every day of real estate agents, and there's no more properties really than there were a year ago or 5 years ago. Even in California, it's pretty locked. Like you don't see a whole lot of houses being built. Like in a suburb of Houston, you'll have more houses built in Houston, in the city, than you will in the entire state of California in the next year. Like in a month in Houston, you'll have more builds than you will have here. So there's finite places for people to buy or rent or anything else, but there's new real estate agents coming to the market all the time. Why? It's a relational business. It's a service that everybody needs. And even though there's finite properties, there's tons of realtors here, and there's millions of them in the United States, and there's always a new one coming in. It's not that way in coaching. You may dispute that with evidence. There's just not enough coaches to coach everybody. And every niche is unserved out there. Well, I don't know. Maybe people won't pay for coaching. Who told you that? Because you wouldn't? Because you don't value it? Who won't pay for coaching? There's plenty of people paying for coaching right now. Listen, money doesn't disappear. It moves around. And people are looking for ways to solve problems. I'm working on some projects right now that I'm going to be doing new things and different things than I've ever done before. And I'm excited about that right now, because I know what the pain points are that have changed over the years with my ideal client. And it means that I've got more of an opportunity to serve them right now than I ever have, because there's real pain points. New generations that are coming in, and I know all about these things about working in leadership and in managing people and all this. Like, I'm familiar with all these things, and I know the pain point really well, and I know what the solution is. Put it together, put it in terms that they understand, and they're going to buy it all day, because that's what people do. Problems never go away, and money always gets sent to problems. Now, if you're out there saying, well, I want to help people live their best life, well, yeah, I would say that probably no one wants to pay for that. But you find a quality problem, you'll never be out of business. See, what's another way of looking at it that's empowering? Is there a way that even right now that you could look at adversity and that you could change the belief system about right now to begin to moving forward in whatever it is that you want in your life? See, it's very easy for me to dispute where a lot of people are living when they're stalled out. If you were your best friend, I'll say this as a coaching question. If you were your best friend, what would you tell yourself to do in your situation? Mr. Coach, Mrs. Coach, Ms. Coach, whatever. What would you tell yourself to do? Like, really, you're in the business of telling people to confront their fears and do what they know is in their heart to do and everything else. Looking in your situation right now, what would you tell yourself to do? And you know what that nugget of wisdom is? That is exactly what you should be doing, because you already know the answer. It's not a how-to problem. It's a peer problem that's keeping you from being able to move forward. On June 16th and 17th. Now, this is not open to everybody. This is advanced skills training. It's our CPC certification for professional coaches. Now, usually when I'm on here, I talk about our basic certification, which is CLC, And I'll talk about that only for a second today. But for those of you who have already gotten trained and certified as a coach from us or somewhere, you've got proof of certification. If you do from somewhere else, you can join us for this. I'm going to show you what I have devised in the last 20 years of working with people of real tools that help people get real breakthrough in their life. And we start out on a Friday night talking about the science of beliefs. How do we get to where we are? And getting underneath beliefs. How are they functioning? How are they created? And also, how do you change a belief? I show you the breakthrough triad. It's these three pieces that are the primary drivers of really someone's master system. And if we know how beliefs are, come about in someone and how to change them, then what I do on that Saturday is I give you tools all day that is interactive. So you use the tools on yourself, and actually utilizing them and getting your own personal breakthrough allows you to help your clients get theirs. So what can you expect? Well, it's a live 10 plus hour online interactive training event where we go into the source of belief systems and you learn a strategy for how you can help your clients overcome limits and maximize their potential. And it's sticking places like imposter syndrome or bad money beliefs or perfectionism, self-sabotage, lies like I'm not enough, irrational fears, whatever. So this is what you can expect through it, but you're going to learn breakthrough skills. You're going to be able to, after you walk away, pinpoint a client's limiting beliefs. You're going to learn brain hacks to remove barriers and self-sabotaging systems, grow in self-worth. You're going to help people eliminate procrastination, conquer irrational fears, and you're going to learn a formula to unlock maximum potential. So what's included? Well, it's 10 plus hours of live training. It's a $19.95 value, and it's streamed live to your computer, laptop, tablet, or mobile device. And we also give you breakthrough tools, because what I always say is what happens after the event is more important than what happened at the event. And that's about a $500 value. And of course, when you complete the training, you'll have a little exam at the very end. You'll earn your CPC credential. And it's a distinction of being a certified professional coach. And what does that mean for you? Well, it means increased proficiency because you're going to be helping people at a higher level. And obviously, it's much more marketable when you can say that you've actually invested in yourself as a coach. There's people on here tonight that have been through it. I would encourage you guys who have been through advanced skills training. You do get to audit and come back. If you had a great experience at advanced skills training, put that inside of the comments. The cost is only $247. So this is not going to break anybody. You can also get enrolled. If you click on that link, it's inside the description. You can get enrolled. And once you get enrolled, you can also get enrolled for the easy pay plan. So we split this up into 4 payments. So we've got you covered either way. A little bit cheaper if you go for the one pay, but if you need it broken up, then you can do that. But it's going to be June 16th and 17th. And again, anybody who's watching that has been through advanced skills training, throw that in the comments in terms of what your experience was in that. I'd really appreciate that. Now, for those of you who have not gotten trained and certified as a coach, I'll say this is your best bet. Our Jumpstart program is $97 a month with a 3-month minimum commitment. Inside of Jumpstart, you get trained, you get the life coach certification course. When we have live Tuesday training, which is tomorrow night, but you also get the self-paced program as well. You get the life coach certification course. You get a free listing on lifecoachmatch.com. You get all of the Jumpstart resources, which is an A to Z business development roadmap. We show you everything on how to start and build your coaching practice around you, whether that be branding. We cover all of that in a full course around branding specifically. We also show you how to take a product from idea generation all the way to launch, and we give you all the steps. We show you how to create a weekly strategy for your business to initiate contact with potential clients and to nurture relationship with people until they become clients. All of this is covered inside of Jumpstart. It's $97 a month with a 3-month minimum commitment. Wednesdays are group coaching call days because you won't ever do any of this stuff by yourself. We take you by the hand, and anything that you want feedback on, you can get feedback from us, and you can also connect with other students who are a part of any of our programs to get things done or to get feedback on what you're working on or any of those things. So let me jump in over here and just see if there's any particular questions that anybody has had for me. There's Jen from Maple Ridge, British Columbia. Awesome. Very cool. Anybody else that would like to say hello? Paul says, I signed up for advanced skills training after several recommendations from several coaches that have taken your course. I'm very excited to take my CLC skills to the next level. Very cool. All right. Anybody else like to say hello before we head out of here? And let me say one more thing about advanced skills training. You cannot join advanced skills training if you have not gotten your basic certification out of the way. So we would love for you to join us. Hey, you have time to get that knocked out though. So if you can at least get enrolled in it, and it'd be a little bit of work to get it done in basically in a week and a half, but it could be done. And so that way you don't have to miss out on this, because we only offer advanced skills training 2 times a year. So if we do it again this year, it's not going to be until December. Awesome. Well, listen, everyone, make sure that you jump inside the description and enroll, and we will see you. Well, if nothing else, I'll see some of you tomorrow night for our coach training that happens on Tuesday nights, and I'll see our Jumpstart crew on Wednesday. Otherwise, I will see the rest of you guys live next Monday, and we're going to continue this conversation about resilience. And next week, I'm going to give you a couple of more tools and a couple of more thoughts of specific areas that you have to go after if you want to specifically beef up your own personal resilience, but also to help other people. All right. Take care. I appreciate you guys all immensely. Have a great rest of your week.